Welcome to the life you crave. Simple and sustainable weight loss for women who have better things to do than diet. I'm your host, Leah Pinelli. I help ambitious, badass women stop overeating, overworking, and overgiving to lose weight from a place of love. I'll help you simplify weight loss, end your overwhelm, and create the life you crave. If you like what you hear, please like and subscribe to this podcast. Let's get started. Hi, friends. Welcome to the Life You Crave podcast today. At the end of a long, stressful day of work, there was always a light at the end of the tunnel for me. And when I say tunnel, I mean like Bay Area traffic. And this light, its golden glow, beckoned me home, and it had a cork in it, and it was always chilled perfectly, sitting in my fridge next to a wheel of brie cheese. And I'd get home and I'd swoop up that baby boy of mine in one arm, and I would grab that wine and cheese and crackers with the other, because nothing relieved my stress and exhaustion like a big honkin' glass of wine and cheese and crackers, and then a big, delicious dinner of usually pasta and salad and some kind of protein to follow. And then, of course, we'd always end with some kind of sweet treat to top it off, like, my favorite Trader Joe's dark chocolate covered peanut butter cups, or some other kind of chocolate, or maybe even ice cream, or some sweet treat that my husband had picked up at work that day. And to be honest with you, it felt so good to get home and to treat myself this way. Like, it really felt like I was pampering myself, treating myself well. But then, interestingly, as soon as the eating was over, I would be in a foul mood, like invariably, inevitably in a foul mood. There were leftovers to put away, dishes to wash, a baby to bathe and put to bed, mail to sort, bags to unpack and repack. There was so much to do. And after eating and drinking, all I wanted to do was go to bed, especially because I had to get up really early the next morning to go back to work. So I would get grumpy. I wouldn't feel well. And I would usually snap at my husband, or worse, pick a fight with him. I was exhausted. I was overwhelmed, and I was really stressed out. This wasn't the life I had pictured for myself. I'm wondering how many of you listeners out there can identify with that. And my weight on top of it was creeping up, causing more stress about not fitting into my clothes and, quote, needing to do something about it. But I had done already everything about it, right? I had done all the diets. I didn't want to live that way again. It took me a really long time to recognize that my evenings of eating were the symptom of a deeper discontent in my life. I didn't love my job. I hated the long hours and the inflexibility. I hated the lack of autonomy and inability to see my young son for more than 2 hours a day. I had too many household responsibilities back then, despite being the breadwinner. But my husband and I were new to parenting, and neither of us really knew how to shift the playing field effectively. So we fought, right? As a lot of young parents do, which led to more discontent in my life and more eating to self-soothe that discontent, and then more discontent on top of that, right? Because now my clothes are getting tight. It was a cycle. I didn't know how to get out of it until I did get out of it. I did stop coming home and eating the way I used to, but I want to tell you that I didn't just do that and everything changed. Everything was perfect. That's not what happened. When I stopped eating to soothe, I was left with the feelings of dissatisfaction, discontent, exhaustion, irritation, frustration, overwhelm. I was left with all of those feelings. And those feelings were plain as day once I removed the food, right? Because now I just had to sit there and feel miserable. And you can be sure that that didn't feel good. So I did something. I decided to do something about what was causing the feelings instead of eating to numb them. I ended up changing a lot about my life. I did not change my husband. I will have you know, same guy, but we worked through a lot together. But most impactfully, I changed my career. But before I had the courage to do any of that, I had to do something far more important. And that's what I want to share with you today. If you're resonating with any of this feeling of discontent and overwhelm or exhaustion, I want you to know that what I had to change before I could stop overeating is I had to change my belief about what was possible for me. I had to decide to believe that I had agency and could, in fact, create the life I craved. A life of more autonomy, more impactful work, and more time with my family. And it started with food. I had to stop overeating in order to see what was there that I was hiding from. So I want to share with you today the 3 big beliefs that I needed to change in order for me to stop overeating, because I have a hunch that these beliefs might just be beliefs that you could benefit from changing as well. If you want to stop overeating, then you must change what you believe is possible for you. Okay, I'm going to give you the first belief that I had to change, but please stick around for my 3rd belief, the last belief, because it's by far the most impactful and most important. The first belief that I had to change in order to stop overeating is I had to believe that I could handle any emotion. I had to believe that emotions were just vibrations in my body and that they would not kill me. And that I could feel the discontent and the disappointment and the frustration and the overwhelm and the stress without eating. And that was a shocking revelation for me. I was like, oh my gosh. Because, it feels like if you don't eat to soothe, if you're somebody who eats to soothe, like I was, it feels like if you don't do that, you're going to break. But what you find is that you can, in fact, feel your feelings and not die, right? To exaggerate a bit, but that is what it feels like in the moment. So that was the number one thing that I had to realize, is that I can handle any emotion. And that was really important to understand. And in fact, it's a lesson that I now teach my son, because it's so important that we recognize that we truly, as humans, are equipped to handle any emotion. Nobody ever died from an emotion, right? Like, the emotion itself does not kill you. So that was the first thing that I really needed to believe. The second thing I needed to believe, and I want to share that this was not something that I necessarily was able to put together in the moment, but in hindsight, this is how it came together. I had to believe that metabolic health was possible for me. Now, here's my disclaimer. I did not know at the time that I was not healthy metabolically speaking. And what I mean by that is, you're healthy metabolically speaking if you can handle some hunger and not get hangry or feel like you can't concentrate or you're going to lose your mind. I couldn't go more than 2 hours usually without eating. I mean, maybe 4, but then I was pretty famished. And that's actually a sign of some metabolic dysfunction. Now, I'm not saying that you're pre-diabetic or diabetic or that you've got some kind of, major disease or disorder. I am not saying that. What I am saying is that here in the US, many of us, and in other countries too, but many of us eat a lot of processed foods. And I was a pretty healthy eater, but I was eating plenty of processed foods and sugars, which can cause our metabolisms to get a little bit out of whack or a lot out of whack. And then if you add on top of that, decades and decades and decades of dieting, restricting and then eating and then restricting and then binging, restricting and indulging, you cause a lot of metabolic dysfunction that you don't even know that you have. So what I didn't know at the time, but that I did learn over time, and what I now teach in my 90 Days to Food Freedom program, is how to actually get back to metabolic health by making some shifts in what you are eating, not having a diet or restrictions, but just shifting what you're eating, when you're eating, and how you're eating in these subtle ways so that you can actually get back to metabolic health. And you are metabolically healthy when you can go 4 hours without getting crazy hungry. And when you can feel hunger and not feel like it's an emergency. In fact, right now, as I'm recording this, it's 10 o'clock in the morning, and I'm feeling a little bit hungry. But, 6 years ago, I might have had to pause this podcast to go eat something. In fact, I wouldn't have let myself get hungry. I would have eaten preventatively before I recorded the podcast. But instead, now I feel a little hunger and it is no big deal. In fact, I'm still not going to eat until I had planned to eat today because I have an appointment right after this and I need to get out the door, right? Like, it's no big deal. It doesn't change my mood. It doesn't change my happiness. It doesn't change my ability to focus. And if anything, it can often increase my ability to focus because my body isn't using a bunch of energy to digest food. So that's a topic that I teach in my program and a topic for another day. But what I want to impress upon you here is that metabolic health is possible. For those of us who have dieted for decades and decades and decades, that metabolic dysfunction is reversible. We can fix it. That's the good news. And that's what we do together in my community. So that was the second thing I needed to believe, right? I needed to believe that A, I could handle any emotion, and B, that metabolic health was possible for me. And then the last thing that I needed to believe, and this was the biggest one, you guys, is I had to believe that the life that I was creating for myself was better than food, was more interesting than food, was more fun than food. I needed my life to be better than food, right? That was what I had to believe. Because back then, food was like the best thing in my life. Of course, I loved my son and of course I loved my husband, but they were additional stress. Food was just pure pleasure in my mouth. And what I realized was I deserved so much more than a brownie. I deserve so much more than a glass of Chardonnay. I deserve to have a life that is deeply, deeply satisfying, where I feel like I'm living the fullest expression of my life and contributing in ways that are beyond my capacity to believe that I ever could before. That is what I had to believe. And that is the belief that drove me to then feel my feelings, right? When I really believed that I could create the life that I craved. I could have a career that was so deeply satisfying. I could have the flexibility in my day to spend more time with my son. I could heal my marriage from, the household responsibility inequities and the anger and resentment, that I could do all of those things. That is when everything shifted, because then I had a reason to feel my feelings when I came home from work. I wanted to feel my feelings so that I could address them, so that I could change the root of the feeling, right? Whatever it was, and whether it was changing my circumstance or changing my thought about it, I needed to believe that it was possible in order for me to even motivate to do it. I like to say that there are 4 C's that are required. It's like a 4C formula for creating the life that you crave. The first is compassion. You have to have compassion for yourself. And the way that we have compassion is by releasing self-judgment and self-blame. The second thing you need is to have curiosity. So when I realized, wow, I really don't love this career that I chose for myself, that I invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in with my fancy degrees, I had to get really curious about, well, what is it that I really do want? And am I willing to eat some humble pie here and let go of what I invested in? And the third C is you have to have the courage to then go get it. And the last C, and do not underestimate how important this C is, it is the C of community. Getting the support that you need. Because I promise you, nobody does this alone. Nobody creates the life they crave all by themselves. So my lovely lovelies, in conclusion, if you want to stop overeating, then you really must change what you believe is possible for you. You must believe that you can handle any emotion. You must believe that metabolic health is within your reach. And you must believe that you can create the life that you crave unapologetically. If you are looking for a community that supports you in this life, please head over to leahpinelli.com and sign up to join our free The Life You Crave community. We have monthly webinars online, of course, monthly masterclasses. We have lots of love and support and opportunities with each other. And I hope that you will come on over and join us. Bring a friend. And of course, if you want to talk more about any of this, your metabolic health, your life that you crave, any of it and all of it, you can simply head over to leahpinelli.com and book a call to chat with me directly there. I would love to connect with you. Ciao, ciao.
You've been listening to The Life You Crave. I lost 30 pounds years ago without dieting, willpower, or deprivation. I'm on a mission to help other women, including you, do the same. You can book a free weight loss strategy session with me over at leahpinelli.com. That's LIAPINELLI.com. See you on our next call or on the next episode. And remember to like, subscribe, and leave a comment on iTunes.